Hello, welcome. I'm Darlene with Digital Photo Mentor, as my name says, and we're here this week doing Lightroom demonstration live. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different this week. I promised that Daniel was going to be here this week, and he forgot, so he was in trouble as well. That it is his son's graduation tonight, so he kind of needs to go to that. So Daniel's going to join us in 2 weeks, but tonight I'm going to be working with Lightroom, giving you some tips and techniques using my own images this time on a few that I actually haven't looked at yet. So you'll be seeing them along with me for the first time. If you are new here, welcome. Each week I usually edit subscriber submitted images, but we're a little short on those right now. So I'm doing my own images today. And if you'd like to participate and have me edit your photos, that is the link to submit your images. I'd like to have your raw files so that I have the best images to work with. And I will show you not only how to edit or how I would edit your photo, but also why I'm doing the things that I'm doing to it. So we'll talk about things like cropping and tone control and why I'm doing the techniques to that particular image. So I'm going to hop over to Lightroom and get started. I will be right back. Okay, let me get myself off the screen. There we go. Okay, so let's see who we have in the house. Danelle is back. Thanks for joining us. We are going to be using Lightroom Classic. Marguerite, Raymond, Ron, and Adelaide, wet and 14. Well, it was actually something like 28 degrees here today, Ron, I think. So we had a nice day here in Canada. And yes, Rob got in trouble because he was not signed into the back end yet, which is the part where he does his little stuff on the backside. So as we've joked in the past, I am the front end and he is the back end. So we should have like a donkey costume for Halloween or something. All right, so let's see where we're at. Marty, hey, welcome, Marty. We are doing Lightroom today, so we're not doing Luminar, just in case you're worried about that. But again, even if you don't use Lightroom, and I know some of you use both Lightroom and Luminar, even if you don't use Lightroom, right, you can still get the tips and techniques of what I'm doing and apply it to whatever software you do use. So whether you use Lightroom, Photoshop, Affinity, On1, Luminar, or something else completely, you can still take these same practical tips, such as where to look in your image and what to edit and how to know what to edit, how to know when you've gone too far. Those things all apply regardless of the software that you're using. All right. Okay. Oh, Stephanie's been to the peony fields. Okay, wonderful. You know, my experience of peonies, Stephanie, is from like way back. My mom used to have them in the garden and they always had ants all over them. So maybe there's a macro opportunity there as well of some ants. We had some giant ants outside yesterday. So easier to photograph, but see if you can get something unique for sure. Do I have my front light on? Yes, I have my light on. It is my regular light, Rob. Without it, I would be sitting in the dark. He's asking me in a private question. Is it too dark? How about that? Is that better? Lots of bees. Okay, bees work too, Stephanie. Yeah, go for it. Hard to get used to Wednesday night. Canadian tulips. Awesome. Well, funny you should say tulips, Sheila, because that's actually a great segue into getting started because I've got some images that I took in Amsterdam in 2018, actually. And I'm guilty of not going through my own images and actually, culling them and editing them myself. I usually kind of do a few right off the bat when I come back from a trip. And then I kind of forget about them because I've got other things on the go, right? So this has actually given me an opportunity to come back and look at some of my images that I've shot recently. So I've got some here, and maybe we'll look at Japan as well. But I wanted to just kind of show you my process. The first thing I want to show you, I'm just going to make my thumbnails a little bit bigger. So I'm using my keyboard shortcuts, okay? And Rob, I want to get you to share a link to the keyboard shortcut PDF. So if you'd like to have a PDF of Lightroom keyboard shortcuts for yourself to print off and have as a little handy cheat sheet, you can do that. We have that available in if you're live in the chat, and if you're watching this as the recording, it will be in the description below the video. So you can just click that and get our free Lightroom keyboard shortcuts PDF. I always have to like pause when I'm saying that because I feel like I need to take a breath. So, sorry, I've got cat hair on my face. I have a cat sitting behind my desk. So hopefully she'll just stay asleep and not come and walk across my desk. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you that when I've imported these, okay, I renamed them. Okay, so you'll notice that the naming structure that I use was the place, so Amsterdam in this case. I did put the year and the name, and then just sequentially 1 through however many pictures I took, right? In this case, you can see down here that I have 442 pictures. So if I go look at the last one, it should be number 442. Oh, somewhere I'm missing one. So I probably have a PDF, PSD or something that's causing a duplicate file, right? So they are numbered 1 to 441. I can tell you right away. Some of these are things that I'm actually going to show you in the Lightroom course. Yeah, it looks like I have all raw files. So somewhere I've got an extra file in here. My guess is I have probably a virtual copy or something like that, right? But it says that there's 442 files, and yet my numbers only go to 441. So I've done something weird. But what I'm doing here is I'm using the filter bar in the library module to just look at or sort by the types of files. I can look at which camera I use to photograph them. And interestingly enough, I don't know if you can see this, but I took 2 cameras along with me, my X100F, which is the one you see in the background behind me, and my X-T3, which is this one that's, my bigger camera on the table, right? And I use the smaller one more often, right? And that is because I was doing a lot of street photography and walking around, and it's a beautiful camera to have for street photography. Okay? So this was what I did after finishing a trip to India. This was 4 days that I had sort of as an extra in Amsterdam to just kill time before I headed home, right? So this filter bar at the top is really handy for also, like, it was able to tell me which camera I used. If I want to know in the grand scheme of things, okay, let's say in all of my tour pictures, for example, I want to know, which cameras I used. Now you can see that there's lots of different cameras here because there's some tour member pictures here as well. But you can see that I used the X100F, my X-T3, and my X-T1, which is my previous camera. Right? I can also take a look and see, well, which lens did I use the most often? Right? I want to make sure I've got all cameras here. Okay, so all cameras, and if I scroll through, it looks like I've used an 18-200 a lot. So that's an old Canon lens that I had. Actually, that's probably a guest lens. And the one that I think I'm probably going to find that I've used the most is my Fuji. Should be under here, 18-135. Yeah, so I've got 22,000 images that I took with that Fuji lens, right? You can also see that I've used the Fuji 35, right? Unknown lens is probably my lens baby or my fisheye, like this one here. Okay, so the filter bar in Lightroom in the library module is really handy for giving you information about your pictures. So for example, if you're going on a trip, you might actually want to look at that, like I did, as to all of my tour pictures or all of my own personal travel pictures, which lens and camera combination I use the most often when I'm traveling, so that I can actually leave the ones that I'm not using very much at home. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get back to Amsterdam here. So I'm not going to do any filtering. All right. So the way that I do culling and editing. Okay. So culling is selecting your best ones. And I did actually a couple of videos on this with a portrait session I did, but I'm going to apply the same principles here. So if you want to see the video that I did on the portrait one, I walk you through my entire process from when I shot them and imported them, how I picked the best ones, how I renamed them, and then how I finished the final editing. So Rob, if you could please share those two videos. They're also on the YouTube channel as well. And if you are watching this as a recorded version, the links to them will be in the description below. Okay. All right, so when I'm going through here, my pictures of Amsterdam, what I'm looking for is something that stands out, right? You probably, like, if you ever had the experience of when you're shooting, you know that you took something and you're looking forward to looking at that picture later, right? So I generally kind of look for those first, right? This is just, sort of my first walk in Amsterdam. I found this neat, rubber ducky store, which was kind of cool. So I kind of took these pictures for my cousin who collects rubber duckies, but I thought it was kind of a neat little shot. And of course, we have the Trump ducky. And of course, as Sheila mentioned, the tulips. Right? So I only took 2 different pictures of this. And when I look at these, they grab my attention immediately. Okay. So I'm using my keyboard shortcuts again. So G takes me back to grid. Enter just brings me to full view. Okay. If I hit enter again, it goes to 1-to-1 or 100%, which you see up here. And enter one more time goes back to grid view. Okay. So when I have these 2 images here, right, if I want to look at them side by side, there's a couple of ways I can do that. I can press N, right, and get rid of the sidebars using tab, or I can use C, which is compare mode, right? So I can see them side by side. The advantage of compare mode is I can actually zoom in, and it will zoom in on both images, right? So for example, if I want to see if one is sharp and the other isn't, that this zooming feature would help me to do that. Right? Now that I'm looking at it, neither of them looks sharp. So what the heck did I do? It looks kind of all soft, but actually I kind of like it that way. And I like the first one because there's a bit more color in this upper corner and less sort of at the bottom. So out of these 2, I'm going to pick the first one and just flag it as a P. So right off the top of my head, I just do really quick picks as to which grabs me. Okay. And I went and tasted some cheese. Again, a lot of these are snapshotty. Of course, the obligatory cat in the window picture. I think he was hanging out to hopefully get some cheese. And of course, I'm photographing my food and my meals. I know that there's one that I did in particular where I went, oh, this is interesting. So this was actually just in the corner of a museum, and I kind of just like the lighting. It's really simple, but I'm just going to flag it because I like the lighting. And it struck me that it might make it interesting black and white. But I did go out and photographed a lot of things at in the evening. And I also went to this little cat sanctuary. So I'm probably not going to process any of the kitty pictures. This was an interesting moment of the cat and the swan. See them together there. See the swan outside. Never seen a swan and a cat together. And I'm looking in particular for some shots that I went out and I did at night. Here's my sandwich. It was a cheese and honey sandwich, interestingly enough, but it was actually really good. Okay, so now we're starting to get into evening. The windows are starting to get lit up, and I liked this idea here of the windows were lit and then the lights on the building over here. So between these 2, the first one has this guy in the middle and this person with a suitcase, and the top of the building is cut off. So I prefer that one, and I'm just going to flag that one. Okay. I know I did some shooting over the canals. These bird ones are kind of fun in the square here. I was trying to get the birds, so I might choose one of these. This person, right? She's like trying not to get pooped on, right? So I kind of like this birds in the square scene. So I'm just flipping through them quickly to get my first impressions. This one I like as well because the birds aren't covering the people. So I'm just flagging with a P Aha, that looks exactly the same. So it looks like there's my duplicate numbering problem. Okay, so I found that problem. And maybe I'll flag this one as well. So I'm just flagging the ones that I like the most, right? Now this one might be interesting to try in Luminar to see if it will get rid of some of these power lines, because Luminar Neo does an automatic removal of power lines, right? So I think I might flag that one to see what I can do with that. But I'm looking for, I shot some blue hour stuff. Here we go. Okay, so I shot some blue hour stuff over the canal. So blue hour is right after sunset. If you could please share a link to the article on the website that I did on blue hour. Actually, there's probably a few of them, Rob. So I was trying to get the essence of Amsterdam here, which is, you know, bicycles and canals. So I was trying to get both in one picture, right? Of the ones that I've shot, okay, that's crooked, but I actually like this one with the cyclist going by, or something like this, right? So I might flag one of these. I really like the red bicycle. So let's just flag that one, maybe that one. And I'm just hitting P, remember? And I like the idea of that one. Okay, so then I'm going to continue scrolling, kitty things, and so on. More canals. There's another one that's kind of nice. Okay, so I'm just looking at the light on the canals. Let's maybe do, I don't like the bicycle in the corner here. Maybe if there was a boat there, I'd prefer it. It's pretty cute. Right, so I'm just getting my first impressions. Let's maybe do that one. And I'll flag a few, because once you've done one like this, actually I'll do a few of these, because you can then copy and paste. Okay, so this one looks straighter, so I'll pick the one that's straight. And you can copy and paste or sync your settings from one to the other. Now here I was playing with some bokeh, okay? So I'm trying to get, you know, focus really forward. So that's kind of neat, hey? And that one might actually be a candidate for adding more bokeh using one of my bokeh overlays. So if you could share that, please, as well, Rob, a link to our bokeh overlays page. So I'm going to play with that. Might not get to all of these today, but this is the nature of, you know, culling. So I cull until I have sort of my favorites. Okay, now I'm getting to where I remember shooting. There's this sort of boat here. I'm not crazy about the red. I know there's one in my head because I remember posting it on Facebook. So I can't remember if I shot it with my phone. Hopefully not. And now it's getting too dark. So see the difference here? Look at the sky here, okay, versus a few pictures ago. Okay, this is the difference about blue hour versus after blue hour. Okay, so once blue hour is done, your sky goes dark. I don't think it was any of these that I got. This is not grabbing me as my favorite here, but I do like this boat sort of going underneath the canal there. Now, which one do I prefer? Okay, hard to say. I could do a comparison. And there was definitely one that I had with the bicycles. I'm going to go with this one, but I think I've got some more. So I'm just going to keep scrolling. Because I was there for a couple of nights. So I think I went out shooting the next night as well. I went to Anne Frank's house. You know, that's sort of obligatory if you're going to Amsterdam. Of course, you've got more things like this. Tulips and wooden shoes. Okay, now this was not blue hour. This was shot at the wrong white balance. Okay, so we see the difference here. If I look at this one, this was shot, what was it shot with? 4,900 white balance, whatever presetting that is. So probably daylight, and it was too blue. So then I switched to shady, and it switched my color over. Okay, so it's just kind of a hazy day. But now I'm coming up to where I'm pretty sure the shots that I remember in my head, right? So this one was kind of cool because I was trying to do a long exposure and getting these boats going by. So that one's kind of neat. Right? Now, when you're doing something like this and you have multiple boats, right, you can actually blend those together. Okay, so I might flag both of those. You can build that up in Photoshop as layers. Notice this boat moving back and forth on the water here. So as long as my tripod, which I use here, is the same, I'm actually going to flag all of these that are the same. So the boat's moving, but you see the buildings are not, right? And I usually do a thing where I flag them as red if I want to sort of try layering them together. Okay, that's definitely a cool shot as well. There's the one I'm looking for, I think. Apparently my Lightroom is having a hard time catching up. But I think this is the shot that I remember. They look exactly the same to me, so I'm just going to pick one. And I had dinner with a friend. Maud. Maud was a photographer that has come on a couple of tours with us. She's a French photographer who's winning all kinds of stuff, all kinds of awards for her photography now, for her street photography. And she lives in The Hague, and she came and joined me in Amsterdam for dinner. So we had a nice dinner. So one of the cool things about traveling is you can meet up with some really neat people, right? And then the last day it was raining, so I went to the museum. Right. So now that I've kind of gone through, I'm not going to do anything with these museum pictures. They were kind of just recording the art and so on. And did I do any last minute ones? Some panning with some bicycles. Right. Panning's always fun. Right. So that sort of represents Amsterdam really well. I like this lady. Look at her expression. This is actually, if you could share a link to our current challenge on the website, Rob, we're doing a Wabi Sabi challenge on the website right now, which is to embrace the ugly or the imperfect, right? So things like images that are not perfectly sharp like this would be considered a great example of the Wabi Sabi, right? So you don't always have to have perfection. I was literally just photographing these things as I waited for the bus or the tram to come. And I went out to see this, right? So it looks like I have flagged a couple of images, right, to work on. I didn't have a tripod, so I was kind of working handheld this day and then opted for mushroom soup. Okay, so now that I've got a few flagged, I'm just going to make the thumbnails a bit smaller. And now I'm going to filter, right? So I'm going to only show images that are flagged. And now it's only showing me 42 different pictures. Okay, so you can see those are all of the ones that I just flagged. And there are definitely some painting ones and so on. Now I see the ones that I want to work on. So I definitely want to do something with these daffodils. Okay. Daffodils. What am I saying? Tulips. Tulips. Daffodils. Apparently I've got Easter on the brain. The first thing that I do in Lightroom is I'm going to check the color profile or the camera profile and change it, because Adobe puts in the Adobe one by default, right? I'm just going to close up the histogram for a moment. But you can also choose from favorites or the ones that come with Adobe or your camera matching ones. Okay, because I shoot with Fuji, I have different profiles such as Astia, or my favorite is actually Provia, and there's a Vivid as well. Okay, so imagine if I don't want to do any editing at all, I could just literally pick Vivid and say, call it a day. Okay, I'm actually going to choose Provia, and I'm going to add a bit more color as we go here using my tricks. So to make sure that I have nice blacks and whites on the histogram, I use a little trick. So I'm holding the Shift key down and double clicking on the word whites. Okay, in this case, it went to the minus. So I'm going to check that in a minute. Then blacks. Okay, so what that's doing is it's setting the end points so that it's touching the graph but not clipping. Okay, there's a tiny bit of black clipping, which is okay. Now I'm going to hold the Alt key down and drag this white slider up a little bit, because I do want to make sure that it's touching the edge, and then just come back a little bit. So you see there's clipping warnings showing up here on this tulip. I called it a tulip this time. And then I'm just going to back it off a little bit. Okay. With the blacks, I want a little bit clipping. With the whites, I don't want any clipping. Okay. And that's that J keyboard shortcut for clipping warnings. Okay. So look at the difference before and afters, the backslash key. All I've done is camera profile and 2 sliders. Okay. I'm going to add a quick vignette here. And I have presets already made that I use and we have available on our website. If you'd like to have our presets, give us a link in the chat, please, Rob, or if you're watching the replay, to our Lightroom presets. So I can literally just click on them, and what happens is it's applying a vignette here. Okay, so all the preset does is it sets these sliders to predetermined amounts. Okay, I find that the color is good. Okay, so going back up to the basic panel, I could warm it up a little bit. Okay, see how the green is a bit warmer now. If you want to move a slider a little bit and you find that it's going too far or too fast, right, you can use what's called a scrubby slider. Okay, by putting your mouse over, okay, I'm going to see if I can zoom in here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not. By putting your mouse over the number itself, okay, can you see it turns into this little hand with some arrows that look like this? When you click down there and then slide, so I'm clicking and holding, it just goes a little bit slower. Okay, so the slider moves a little bit slower when you're doing that. Okay, might give it a little bit more magenta, which will give those pinks. Okay, now if I want to adjust things independently, okay, I can also go down to HSL. So HSL stands for hue, saturation, and lightness. And if I want to increase the saturation of the flowers but not the greens, this is where I want to do it. Okay. So there's a targeted tool here. You just click on it, and then you get this little crosshairs with a circle and an up and down arrow. Can you see that here? So wherever I click and hold and drag up and down, you can see that it's only affecting the magenta slider. See that? Okay, so I can affect the saturation of anything I click on or any similar tones. So if I want the green, Rob, your alarm is beeping at me in the kitchen, so you might want to get that. If I want to affect the green so that they're not quite so intense, or shift the green a little bit more yellow, I can do that. Okay. Well, let's go back here, give it a little bit more saturation. So I'm not doing a lot of difference here. I'm just darkening the greens and making the flowers come out a little bit more. Okay, see what that's doing? So it shifted the green color and brings the flowers out a little bit more. Okay. I feel like I want to crop it a little bit as well. Maybe just a little bit from the bottom and the right. I'm holding down the shift key so that when I move this, it keeps the same aspect ratio. Okay. So I'm coming in just a little bit on the bottom and on the right. About like that. Okay. I'm still not sure about this bright area at the top here, so I might tone that down another way. Okay. Now let's see. I'm going to try a mask. So a mask will allow you to do what's called local adjustments. A global adjustment is everything I've done so far. It applies to the entire image. Okay, so a mask, I'm going to choose select subject, applies to only a part of the image. Okay, I'm going to change this overlay so we can see where it's applying here. So it's picked these flowers and this one. Okay, so it hasn't picked any of the others. Let me just move this out of the road too. So if I want to add these flowers, okay, I could choose add color range, and I'm just going to draw an outline. So it's picked everything that is similarly colored. Okay, I don't want the bits in there, so I can refine it using this slider. Okay. And I'm also going to do one more thing because I don't want these ones up here affected as much. So I'm going to do a subtract and maybe just a radial gradient up here. Okay, so see how it's just taking it away. And I'll show you what I'm going to do to these flowers in a second. So I don't want them affected. Okay, I want to make sure that I am getting this one here though. And it still hasn't picked up that one. So I might do another one, which is adding just another radial gradient. So radial is a circle, basically, just over this flower right here. Okay, make sure I've got it covered. Okay, so now I have the mask and I have the selection that I want, and I'm just going to give them a bit more clarity and texture. So in essence, see, I'm sort of sharpening them where they looked sort of blurry before. So I'm sharpening these and letting them sort of fall out of focus towards the background. So that's why I didn't want these ones sharp, right? And as a matter of fact, I might do another radial gradient. Actually, I'm going to do a linear gradient so that it sort of softens or takes that mask away from the top, the very top. Okay? So that focus fades out up at the top. Okay? Can you see where I have masked now? Okay, so everything I'm doing here with these sliders is only applying where the parts are green. So that's where I'm giving it texture, okay, to the flowers. I can also do dehaze, which tends to increase blacks and saturation as well. Okay. So see what that's doing. I'm just going to turn this one off. Look at the flowers. Okay. Now I'm going to do another mask. Let's move this over again. And this one, I'm going to do a color range, but I'm going to select the greens. Okay, so now it's basically selected everything else. Again, I can refine it. And I don't want to select this flower, so I'm going to subtract a radial gradient again, so it's not getting this flower. Make sure I cover the whole flower, like so. Okay. And I'm going to subtract the radial, or I'm going to add, pardon me, I'm going to add to it because I want to add linear gradient up the top here. So I am blurring this. Okay. So what I did before was I sharpened. Now we're actually going to blur. So I'm going the other way with sharpness and clarity. Okay. And I'm going to rename this one just so you can tell. Okay, so this one is blur. And this one is sharpen. Okay. So when I close the mask, actually, let me just show you what all the masks are doing. So if I turn it off and on, okay, so it's simultaneously punching up the pink flowers and blurring the green ones at the same time. Okay. If I want more blur, I can do more minus clarity, more minus sharpness, okay, minus texture as well. Let's just take it all the way to the extreme. Let's see what that's doing to the leaves. I'm not going to go quite that far, though. It's a little too blurry. Okay. I could also darken them. So if I really want to bring the flowers out even more. Okay. So let's do a before and after. So that's the before, and that's where I'm at now. Okay. So for me, I would actually probably pull this into Luminar and give it a little bit of mystical, but we're doing Lightroom this week, right? And we did something similar with the blur here, right? Any questions? How are we doing over here? Stephanie says, setting the white and the black point makes it so much cleaner. Yes, thank you. Do we like this edit on the tulips or the what did I call them? Daffodils? Do we like the edit on the daffodils? And honestly, I'm just drinking water, guys. There's nothing else in here. All right. Quiet in the house tonight. Rob saw a photo of a painting and went, ooh, and ah, but yeah, it was a painting. There's lots of paintings. I went to the very famous museum in Amsterdam. I can't remember the name. It's got like a really long Dutch name. Okay, so I want to do some of these sort of blue hour shots because I think the processing on them is going to be really similar. Let's work on this one with the red bicycle and then go from there. Okay, so I'm going to do the same process here. I'm going to go do the color profile first. I like Astia Soft also. That's another one of my favorites. I often usually shoot with that profile. Right? Actually, Provia is a little less blue, so one of those two. I use Astia and Provia. Those are my sort of my Fuji go-tos. Okay. I'm just going to get rid of this so I can see a bit more of the tools here right now. All right, so now do I like the color? Well, I'm going to bring the highlights down a little bit. You can see that that affects the sky really nicely, but it's also affecting the bicycle. So I'm not going to go too far because I like the highlight on the bicycle. And I'm going to do Alt, right? I estimated in advance that if I did Shift double click on white, it was going to go minus because of some of these highlights. So I'm not too worried. This is a car headlight that's blown out. I'm not too worried about that clipping. And you'll notice that as I increase it, the bits that are showing clipping are actually lights. Okay, so I'm not worried about those clipping. And I'm going to make sure Shift double click on blacks and actually go a little farther, okay, than that. Now you'll notice the clarity is at 12 and I haven't done anything to this image yet. I use an import preset. So that's something that I actually have in our Lightroom presets as well. Oops, that's the wrong one. Okay, so settings for import. So I've already applied one that had clarity and a vignette and a little bit of sharpness. Right, so if I look down, I'm going to see that I already have a vignette turned on and I didn't do that yet. Okay, and under detail, there's a little bit of sharpness been added. Okay, so I'm going to increase that, but that's where those settings are coming from, is I've applied a developed preset when I imported to this entire set of images, right? Well, the image is a little blue, but it's blue hour, so we want to kind of leave it that way. I don't want to go too crazy, and I want to darken the sky, so I'm going to use masking, select sky, because Lightroom does a really good job. The one thing I have noticed, though, is it's not that great around trees, to be honest. So I want to add to it, and I'm just going to do luminance range and select the sky. See, now you can see that it picked out all around the sky and the water, but also it's getting some of the buildings. Okay, so I could try and minimize that a little bit using these sliders here. Okay, so that's actually not too bad right there. Okay, but it's getting this boat too, which is fine. Now, if I don't want it to affect this bicycle seat, okay, I'm going to have to do a subtract and just make sure that I don't get the bicycle seat or the boat if I want to protect the boat as well. Okay, so a mask you'd think would just be, okay, sky, and I'm done. But because it didn't do a great job, I had to add to it to get the full tonal range of the sky, and then subtract to it because it got things that I didn't want to get. Okay, so now I'm going to rename it sky, and I'm going to darken. Okay, so I'm darkening as opposed to bringing the highlights down. I'm darkening overall. Okay, now we're getting more of that blue hour look. Okay, the next thing I want to do is there's these red lights in here, so I'm going to make another mask because I'll show you in a second here. Okay, let's do this in two parts. Okay, so I could go back to HSL and say, well, I want to tone down these reds, right? But if I do that, see how it's affecting the bicycle as well and the reflections here. Okay, so I don't want to affect those things. I just want this one. Okay, so I'm going to do a mask, and I'm just going to do a little radiant mask here. And I'm going to try highlight darken. And I'm going to try lowering the saturation. So lowering the saturation, see how that affects the reds? And that's actually doing a pretty good job there. Okay, so it's taking that red down so it's not quite so, I would say, offensive. Okay. This headlight over here that bugs me, I'm actually just going to clone it out. So I'm going to use the healing tool to just draw over the light. And see how it did a pretty good job. But I showed this in a previous tip, and I have a video on Lightroom using the cloning versus the healing tool and how you can use it at a lowered opacity. So if you could share that link for them, please, Rob. Okay, so I can remove this thing using healing completely. Okay, or I can just lower the opacity. I'm going to redraw that because I want my feather a little bit lower, and I'm just going to make sure I get the light. Okay, so it's picking a different spot than I'd like it to pick. healing, and I'm just gonna see if I lower the opacity, it goes pink on me, which is kind of weird. So maybe if I choose another spot, it won't go pink. Yeah, it's going pink no matter what I do. So I just want to get rid of it. There we go. Feather it a little better. Okay, so that's not bad. It's not going to show when I zoom out. It's just going to get rid of that light, right? And I might do the same with this one here, just because it's grabbing a little too much attention, right? And I'm going to do the upside down trick for you in a moment here, because when you look at your picture, right side up, your brain knows what it should be looking at, right? Which is, in this case, the bicycle. When you look at things upside down, right? And I'm just using a shortcut to do that again, a keyboard shortcut. L is lights out, so I can get rid of everything and just see the picture. So when you look at it upside down, okay, where does your eye go right now? To me, it goes to the bicycle, but also these bright things in the background, right? So I am going to tone those down a little bit, but not too much. But if I show you the before image, where does your eye go? Okay, it goes to these spots over here, goes to this spot here, and this red spot, okay, and as well as the sky. The bicycle is almost lost. So what I've done so far is to already bring the bicycle out, but let's take it on the next step, okay? So I'm going to go back to develop, leave my tools back, okay? And I'm going to see what happens if I choose select subject and see what the program thinks is the subject. Okay, well, it thinks the fence post is the subject of this image. Okay, so it's not, obviously. Okay, so that's not going to work. So I'm just going to undo that. Okay, so what can I do? I want to select the bicycle. What other ways can I use to select it? Okay, I could use a radial filter, a radiant mask here, okay, to select it. Now, obviously, when I do that, I'm going to feather it a little bit less. When I do that, it's selecting the bicycle, but it's selecting other things, right, that I may not want to be included. So how do I just get the bicycle? Okay, well, I can do what's called an intersection. This is a complex one where you can do intersect with, and I'm going to do color range and choose the red of the bicycle. Okay, now look what happened. Okay, so now it's only selected the red parts that are also inside the bicycle. Okay, so there's red up here, but it's not selecting that red because it's intersecting, meaning it has to fit both the radiant circle, radial gradient, and the red that I selected. Okay, so that's just a cool way of masking. So now I can brighten the bicycle. I can give it some more texture and clarity so that it comes out more. Okay. Now this thing here, when I did the selection, and I call this bike, right? When I did the subject selection and it selected the post, right? If I want to select the rest of the post, I can add to it again with maybe a luminance range or brightness range, right? So I can see, okay, it's going to select everything, which is not what I want. So we can adjust the sliders to select fewer tones, okay? Okay, like that. Now I can also do another subtract. So it's kind of a complex process because, oops, no, I didn't want luminance range. I want to subtract linear gradient. I don't want to affect anything up here. I just want the bicycle, okay? So I'm going to keep my, like so. Okay. So that's kind of not bad, but it's also getting the water. I can try and, fudge that a little bit more. Right, that's getting closer, but now it's not getting all of the railing as well. Because what I want to do here is I want to increase the texture and the clarity. And if it does the water, that's okay. Right? Because see what it's doing here is it's picking up the texture of this post. Right? So I'm editing all of these things independently. Okay. So let's look at the before and after. Okay. And now that I'm looking at it, I see that this building up top here is affected by the sky mask. Okay, so I might just say, okay, I want to limit that a little bit more so it's not getting the building. See that? The building just brightened up. Okay, so I just edited my mask. Anytime you apply these things, these are non-destructive editing, right? So you can adjust them at any time. I'm just going to darken yellow and see if that fixes some of the highlights. Yes, it does. And I want to brighten the whole image a little bit. There we go. And then just a vignette. Okay, so before and after. Now that I've done this, I've done lots of masking on it, but let's just copy. So I'm going to copy all the settings except cropping and spot removal because those are very specific per image. Okay, so I'm cropping everything, including the masking. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to, let's say, the next image. And let's see what happens if we paste. So I'm doing Command V. Okay. So what happens is the masks show up here. Okay. But you notice there's a little exclamation point here because the sky is an automated one, right? So it needs to be updated to match the sky in this image. So when you see this, you can copy and paste these automated ones. You just have to go in and update them like so. Okay. So this one I don't need because that was for the red spots. So I can actually just delete that one. And this one for the bicycle, let's just see where it's applying. Okay. So it's not really going where I want it. Okay. So I may have to edit this one a little bit. Okay. And again, I have to select the sky again, or this one is subject actually. Now that one did a better job, right? So this one did a better job of selecting the bicycle and a bit of the water than this one, right? So I may just delete this one because it's not really adding anything here, okay? So now that I've got them selected, I can go back and look at my main settings. It's got the same camera profile. Let's see how it's doing. Okay, so before and after is pretty good. Okay, I think I would tone down the colors of this sign here, and the sky definitely needs a little bit of refinement because if we look at the sky mask, it's missing that bit in the sky again. It's missing that. It's missing that. We don't need that. Let's just see. Okay, so it's missing that part of the sky in amongst the trees. So let me just see if I expand it. Okay, see now it's getting the sky, but then it's also getting the buildings, right? So instead of this radial gradient, which is a subtraction, I'm just going to get rid of it. Now we're getting some complex masking here, okay? And instead I'm going to subtract. Yeah, maybe I'll do a different one. I'm going to subtract a radial gradient, but I'm going to put it right across the middle here, okay? Because I don't want it affecting the buildings. See that? So what I'm trying to do is get it to work on everything except the buildings. It's working on the water and the bike down here. Okay, so maybe I want actually a bigger one. Oops. So that it's just getting the sky. Okay, now we're getting closer. You see that? It's still getting those buildings a little bit, but we're getting closer. So if I turn that off, see now I've got a mess. So this is what happens when you get a mess. Okay? Can you see what's happened to the tree there? Okay. So something I've done with the masking on this part is affecting the tree too much. Okay? So it takes a lot to mask. Let's just do that. There we go. How's that? Better. Yeah, so it's still not great, is it? Right? It's still not great. There we go. That's better. Okay. Spreading my thing out a little better. Okay, so quick copy and paste at least is a good starting point on this image as well. How are we doing here? Can we copy the other car headlight? Was that in the other image, Ron? Let me go to the other image. I could, yes. So you mean I want to copy that headlight? Let's try that. Okay, so I used that one. Okay, so let me turn the feather down, and I'm getting a small brush so I can just paint over the headlight. Okay, so in this case, I want to use clone because I want a direct copy and put it on this headlight. So see, the challenge is it doesn't match, right? The rest of it doesn't match. Let me try the different blend. Let me try heal. That's not bad. Okay, so that's not a bad idea. Maybe let's feather it a bit more. Yeah. Good idea, Ron. Yeah. Look at that. Okay, so it just takes away that super bright, right? Still a little pink, but that's not bad. This one here, I probably wouldn't clone if I want this highlight or this little red one over here. I might just do a quick little paintbrush, right? So I might just do a mask and just paint it in real quick with lowering the highlights, and I'm just darkening here, right? See how that's just affecting those areas? And if you lower clarity, you'll bring them down as well. Okay? Like so. Okay. So that's the benefit of the copy and paste from a lot of these things from one to the other. Does anybody want to see me put these images together? And it's going to be more of a Photoshop thing, but if I want to put these ones in, okay, so I need my thumbnails back. Let's see. Yeah, so the ones that I marked red. So see, that's why I marked them red, because if I had included this image, you'll see what happens, okay? I probably could, okay, but if I include the last image, let's look at the thumbnails here, okay? So this is the first one. I'm looking at the building. So the buildings are not moving, right? Now watch what happens on this very last one. The buildings moved. So something with my tripod moved. So if I try and put these together, something's not going to go right, right? But I'm going to do it anyways just to show you how I could possibly fix it. So before I take these to Photoshop, I want to do some basic edits, okay? So I want to choose my color profile, and I want to make sure that I've got not so much highlights clipping. That's better. A little bit of blacks clipping. Now I might brighten the color a little bit or exposure a little bit, and I find it's almost too blue and a little too sort of magenta. So I'm going to lower that a little bit. That looks like a better color to me. Maybe bring the shadows up a little bit, just a little bit more detail in there, right? And I can do a sky. Let's see how it does on sky on this one. I find that, yeah, it doesn't always do such a great job on the sky, because if we darken it, look at that, okay? It's not perfect, right? So if you're used to using Luminar, it actually, in some cases, does a better job of masking the sky than Lightroom even. But that's not bad, okay? So I want to darken the sky a little bit. And I want to make sure that I have these applied to everything, right? I can also go and see in here about, do I want to make sure that this picture is straight, right? So I can just make sure it's not tilting. I can also check this way, right? So leveled it a little bit. Okay, so it looks like it's leveling it a little bit. And now I'm going to do sync. Okay, so I'm choosing to sync them all, and I'm going to do the cropping. It's going to mess up the last one, but let's just check it. Okay, so I'm syncing them all. When I go to the next one, I'm going to have to make sure I update the sky mask. Okay, so as soon as I do, you see that it fills the sky in. Okay, then I go to the next one. I got to do the same thing. Update. Okay. And this is the one, is this the one that was crooked? Yeah, this is the one that was really crooked. So it looks actually better already. So maybe I fixed it just by correcting the tilt. Okay, so now after I have them selected, what I do is I want to look at this view, right? And I'm looking for, do they look similar tone? And you'll notice that they're getting darker progressively. Okay. And that's because it's getting darker, right? So what I might do is go back to the first one and just darken it a little bit. So I had brightened this one, right? And I'm going to darken this one or put it back darker, right? And then maybe brighten this one a tiny bit more. So I'm just trying to make them match a little better, okay? Yeah, that one's still crooked. Okay, so I'm checking again, density. I'm checking, are they straight? Now these all should be still the same, right? So I use the same crop and the same correction. And then when we get to this last one, okay, this is where it's kind of gone wonky. So I'm going to reset the crop and I'm going to reset transform, okay, because I'm going to have to probably fix it another way. Okay, so I'm going to correct the tilt. And let's see if that's any closer. Yeah, see, now it's cropped in. See that? So it looks like the buildings are closer together. So I don't know if that's going to work, but we're going to try it. Okay. Now this one is a little bit darker again, so I'm going to brighten it. And one more time, checking these. Okay, so I'm looking for, are the exposures fairly similar? Now they're better. Okay, the ones are still a little bit darker towards the end. Once I have them all, I'm going to right click and choose Edit In, Open Layers in Photoshop. Okay, so this is the method that I use for combining light painted images. So this is a form of light painting, but with car trails. Okay, so if you do anything like this where you are doing multiple images and you have cars going by, in this case I have boats, okay, so it's light trails, you can stack them. So what you see happening here is they're opening the images in Photoshop. Okay, you can see this one is off kilter, and that's because that's the one that was crooked, right? So we just have to wait for them to all open. Okay, so I'm opening them directly from the raw files, but with the edits already applied in Lightroom. Okay. All right, so now we've got this opened. Let's go back over here. I am going to set my screen so you can see my tools here. Okay, so now we've got those 5 layers. Okay, they're all opaque. And I'm just going to turn them all off one by one. And you can see that's the one that's off kilter. Okay. So I'm going to pick this one as the bottom. I usually want to do the darkest one on the bottom. And you'll see that if I turn them all on, right, the buildings aren't moving. They're perfectly aligned. Okay. This one at the bottom is not. So what I'm going to do is turn them all on, select them all, and then choose Edit, Auto Align Layers. I'm going to choose Auto. So the program is going to try and look for things that are in the image that are the same. So it should see the buildings and it should line them up. Okay. So it also should correct any distortion from one to the next so that they match a little bit better. Okay. So I'm just going to start with this bottom one. And as I turn it on, see, now look, it matches with the images. But because this one on the bottom was cropped in a little bit more because of the tilt, I'm going to put it on the top, and we're just going to use part of it. Okay, so I'm going to put it at the top. Oops, I'm going to turn that one on. So I'm going to put it up here. Apparently it doesn't want me to do that. All right, let's turn them all on. I got to select one. Let's just select one. There we go. I had them all selected. All right, so go back to just one. And now I'm going to turn the blend modes to lighten, right? You can do this all at once, but I'm going to do it one layer at a time just to show you what it does. So I've turned the next layer on with the eyeball, change the blend mode to lighten. Okay, so now what you see it's doing is it's adding anything that's lighter in this top image than the bottom image. So it added that second reflection from that boat, okay? Now I'm going to do the third one. Okay, now you see what happened? It's fully opaque until I change this blend mode to lighten. Okay, now it's going to lighten any parts that are lighter in this image. And in this case, it's making the water and the reflections brighter. So I don't think it's actually adding anything in this car over here. So I might actually skip that one. Okay, now we're going to do the next one. Change to lighten. So what I'm looking for is, are there any water reflections being added. Okay, so this one here extends the reflections a little bit. There's a nice starburst over here. Okay, there's a car that went by on the street, so that's kind of cool. And this street light came on, or the light came on in the building. So that one, I don't mind. I might keep that one. But see, it's also adding a blur to this boat here. Okay, so I could mask that off if I want to not show that. Now this last one, I'm going to choose lighten, and we could get some weird stuff happening here. But let's just see if it adds anything to the street. Okay, there's definitely some more streaks happening here. Okay. And we'll have to crop it if we want to use that image. Okay. But I can actually, let's lower the opacity of this one a little bit. So I'm only applying it. Yeah, that's not working either. So we could definitely mask it, but there's a really cool reflection in the water here. But is it adding anything? Okay, there's another streak through the water, but I don't know that it's adding anything. Oh, we've got the top of the building now, so that might make a different crop. Okay, I'm inclined to go without it, or I'm going to mask this boat and do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to mask this boat out by using a mask and a black brush. So you're painting with black, and I'm going to paint. I'm painting with 50% opacity, so you can see it's applying over here, right there. Actually, let's paint at 100% opacity. So I'm masking out this part here. See that? So it's not applying to this part of the boat. Okay, so when I turn this layer on and off, you see it's just affecting the water now. Okay, and this one, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to apply an inverted mask. So I'm going to use the Alt Option key, and when I click this mask, it applies a black mask. Okay, so from this one, I'm just going to paint with white. So switch it around to white over the parts that I want to show. Okay, so I'm going to paint with 50% opacity. I've got to turn this thing off because it's messing up my size of my brush here. Right, let me just pick my brush. Okay. What else is going on with my brush size here? Okay, so I'm checking my brush. Yeah, see, that's not what I want. There we go. Okay, so now I just got a normal-ish brush, and I'm going to paint in what I know these streaks are in the middle here. Okay, see that? So I'm just doing a 50% paint. Whoops, come back. Okay, if I turn the mask off, I can actually see where it's showing up. Okay, so if I want to, I'm holding the Shift key when I'm clicking on the mask to do that, by the way. All right, so get back on the mask. Let's do a little bit more in here. Okay, so it's just brightening these highlights a bit, like so. See, it's run out of a highlight there, so I might blend that one. Is there anything else? Oh, I missed part of this streak. Okay, so I'm going to get this one. Make sure I get that one all the way. Okay, that's good. Did I miss anything else? Extending that one a little bit. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so see what that's doing. Oops. Okay, it's just adding a part of that image. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm actually going to remove some of this because I actually find that it's a little too bright, and the bottom part of it is cut off. So I'm just going to include the top and sort of fade it down like that. Okay. So I just did that by altering my brush opacity, right? And I can match that one to it. So now I'm just going to do a little crop. Now I could crop, or I could try content aware fill and see if the program fills these in, but there's nothing really there that I need to save particularly. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got all the edges filled with image. Missed a little part over on this side. Come in a little more. There we go. Okay. Still missed part. Okay. Still missed a bit over here. Come in a little bit more. Oops. Hopefully if I zoom in a bit here, because then I can make smaller adjustments. You know, I can get to the edge here. And it looks like a little bit on the top. Yep. Still missed the top. Okay, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to come in a little bit more. Let's see. Mask out what you do not want on the top of that photo. Yes, that's what I did. Actually, I did the opposite instead, right? So instead of masking out, I'm only masked in the part that I wanted to show, okay? Because there was less of it. So now all I have to do is save. So file, save. So not save as. This is a mistake that a lot of people make going from Lightroom to Photoshop, is they do a save as, and then they wonder why the image didn't get put back into Lightroom. So just do a save. Don't do save as. And then when I close it, Rob is reminding me that we're at 1 hour. Then when I close it from here, it's going to come back into Lightroom. So give it a moment to save this one. Right. And let's see if anybody else had anything to say here. Yes, yes, yes. Everybody likes that one. Okay, so now we're back in Lightroom, right? And it has imported that image. Often I also get questions about, it didn't bring my image back in, or I can't find them, okay? If you have sorted your images, okay, I'm just going to get rid of this panel. Your sorting is here, okay? So if you've sorted by something else, okay? If you've sorted by ranking or ratings, or you've sorted by color, for example, okay? Let's sort label by color, okay? It's not going to show with the others. See how they're not together? But if you sort it by file name or capture time, it should come back in with the same file name with just an extension, and you'll see that it's next to them, okay? So now let's take a look at all of them, because we did this one as well. And my sort of color coding is, I use red for my images that were sort of the original, or the brackets if I'm bracketing, and yellow for the one that's finished. Okay, so the first 5 are the sort of images that it was pulled from. This is the finished one here, I think. Oops. No, I do not want to delete it. Yeah, so I'm going to put the PSD last. And I have my Photoshop set to show me to edit as a PSD when I go to Photoshop. Okay, so that's something that you check in your preferences. I will mention that we are doing a Lightroom course coming up soon. I haven't set the dates for the live yet, but I have started recording the videos. Okay, so we haven't got those up on our class system yet. So if you've bought the Lightroom class, there are some videos coming for you soon, because Rob just finished a server migration for our entire website, which was a big job. But when you log in now to any of the courses that you've purchased from us, the pages will load much faster. Okay, so it's a good thing. Trust me, it's a good thing. Okay, so if you could please share a link to the Lightroom page, the Lightroom course information page, if people want to learn more about the Lightroom course. It's probably going to be about 40 different lessons at this point, at least 12 hours, again, similar to the Luminar one, and we'll have live classes where we watch the lessons together and Q&A. So it'll be exactly the same format. So to go back in here, let me just go make this bigger again. Okay, so see the first 5, let me turn my little pointer back on. First 5 are the ones that I used to pull into Photoshop. And you can see that this one now is a combination of all of the other 5. So I didn't get very many light streaks in one single shot, right? But I sat there and I waited and I took multiple pictures, because I knew that I could do this later. Okay, so if you're trying to get traffic trails and there just isn't very much traffic, just take lots of shots, okay? Because you can always come and blend this in later like this, okay? So I think that's a pretty cool shot. And for me, that speaks of Amsterdam, right? As well as the bicycle. So two others and the bicycle on this boat in the foreground, but I'm fairly happy with that. Right? All right. So the rest of these ones that I flagged, I could do something similar again and copy and paste, right? And see how they go. I'm going to do one more because I really like the tonality of this one. I sort of like that it's sort of just this yellow and gray, and I want to work with that. So I'm going to go, let's go Astia, Provia. Ooh, Vivid is kind of cool, actually. I almost never choose Vivid because when I do this trick with the whites and the blacks, right, there's already some stuff clipping, so I don't want to go too far with that. When I do this trick and add the blacks, it almost always increases the intensity of the color, right? So I tend not to use Vivid. In this case, it actually looks pretty good. It's a little on the blue side, so I'm just going to give it a little bit less blue, a little more yellow. And otherwise, I really like what that's doing, okay? I find that the shadows are really blue, so I don't want to make the whole picture more yellow, okay? Because then everything starts to look orange. So what I can do is set it for neutral on these whites here if I want. Okay, so that's neutral according to this eyedropper. Okay, maybe a little bit less green. And then I can just go and use the color grading tool to adjust the shadows and set them to yellow. Okay, so I'm just going to add a little bit of yellow this way. Okay, let me turn this one off. This used to be called split toning, and now it's color grading. So it's just shifting shifting the shadows. Try to say that fast 6 times. Shifting the color of the shadows slightly so it's not so blue in the shadows. Okay. I'm going to bring the shadows up a little bit and the highlights down a little more. Now, I don't know if there's anything in that sky. Well, it looks like there might be. Okay. If I bring the highlights down a little bit more and then just brighten the overall exposure, that looks good on the building, but the sky is still blown out, right? So I'm going to see how it does on a sky selection on this one. Okay, better. It's better than with the tree. It seems to not like to blend with trees, especially if the trees are bare for some reason. So now I can darken the sky. But look, it's just kind of blah, right? So if I darken it, it's gray. Yuck. So what I want to do is give it some color. So I could go into Photoshop or Luminar and do a sky replacement, but what if I don't have to, right? I'm actually going to give it a little bit of white and a little bit of black and then darken the exposure, because by increasing the whites, I'm trying to do a very slight contrast in the sky, okay? I can give it a little bit of clarity, which will help. And then down here is a tool that often gets missed by people. It's a color, okay? So I can actually, I can adjust the color here and say, okay, I want more blue in the sky. And that kind of works. Or I can do like an overlay color, okay? So when I click this, I can pick any color. I could even make it sunset, okay? So we could make a sunset over the sky if we want more orange. But I kind of like the idea of blue hour. All right, we can make apocalypse. Let's not do that. So that's not bad right there. And so I like that. And then I can just darken it a little bit more. See, it's still not blending. It's still not blending. I'm going to just do, in addition to here, I'm going to do another luminance range and just select these light tones here and see if I can get it to blend a little better. See, now it's picking up this here. Okay, so I should have intersected that with the sky instead. Right, so instead of adding it, I should have done intersect, right, or do the luminance range first. Actually, I'll do the luminance range first. No, that's not gonna work either. Now I need to do a subtract. Okay, so I'm gonna do a subtract. So I don't want it on this bottom part at all. I just want the sky. Okay. This is picking up a little bit on the building too, so I may have to adjust it. But what I'm looking for is, does it blend better around the buildings? Yes. Okay. So did you see before there was that halo? When I tried to adjust it, right, there was that halo there. And no matter what I did, the sky was just looking odd. Okay, so I know the overlay off, less purple, less magenta. So I can use this color sliders too. Okay. And this one, maybe a little less purple here. Less intense color. Okay, so see the difference here? If I turn off the mask. Okay, blown out sky. And there is something there, right? You just have to figure out how to work with it. I'm not going to bring the clarity up. Okay. So that looks pretty good. That looks better. I might even go a little more purple. Right? I'm going to do an edge vignette. Let's try a medium one. And I'm going to go back and refine that. Let's try actually orange here. So we went blue. Let's go the other way. Okay. Now we got more of a sunset. So we get to decide. Not bad. The thing that attracted me in this shot, to take this shot in the first place, was this shop here in the windows. So I really like that balanced with these colored lights over here. Now let's see what happens if I apply that to all of these. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I want my film strip back over here. So I've got them all selected and I'm going to sync. Okay, I don't need to crop, but I am going to mask. And again, I'll just have to go and select the sky, right? So yeah, that one a little wacky. So this one, obviously the sky is not working there. Okay, so we need to select the sky. And the orange is not working on this one. So we're definitely going to undo the orange, right? And just darken. Okay, so we're darkening this sky and maybe making it a little bit more blue. Okay, so the sync didn't work because I had done this weird sort of tonal range. Okay, that's picking up the sky pretty well. Okay. So when you do a copy and paste or sync, you just have to double check. Okay, now that I've adjusted it, I can copy this one and paste it onto this one. I'm going to replace the masks and then just fix this one again. Okay, so these new masks in Lightroom are great. You just have to learn a little bit and spend a little bit of time working with them. We actually have a 6-hour class that was led by Pete Vandenine. If you haven't already shared that with them, I will be covering the masking tools in the course that I'm doing, but 6 hours on masking tools is not, I can't cover that much. So it would be a good supplement to the full Lightroom course. And to answer your questions, no, you haven't missed it yet, Stephanie. I haven't done it yet. So I've just started recording the lessons. And because we were doing our server migration, we haven't put any of them up yet. So there will be some lessons coming up very soon. And yes, this is Lightroom 2022, and it's Lightroom Classic, Danelle. So I'll be teaching Lightroom Classic right from the very beginning, right? Thanks, Danelle. I love street photography like this and having fun with these birds were just crazy. They kept landing in the square and then taking off again. And people were ducking because I'm sure at some point somebody was going to get pooped on. Remember the color tool? Yes. That's what the color tool is for, Ron. You can literally color things. Absolutely. Let's just say, see this yellow vest here? Okay. Let's say I want to get rid of this yellow vest because, okay, what did I just do? There we go. Okay, so let's say I want to get rid of this yellow backpack because it's pretty obnoxious, right? So I'm going to make a new mask with this color range, and I'm going to select this crazy, change my overlay to red because I obviously can't see it. So it's been selected. Okay, so I could just desaturate it like this. Okay, so let's say I desaturate it, but then I want to, maybe I want a blue backpack instead. Okay, so I can literally change the color, or if I make it red, okay, instead of, let's just make it blue. Yeah, I still have to get rid of it. Still not working. So I still have to do the saturation. Okay, but you can see that when I desaturate, the blue comes over top of the saturation. Okay, so I can sort of realign this color of this backpack. Okay, because that lime green backpack in the middle of the frame, no bueno. Okay. Again, I can just do a paste because I still had the other settings copied. Fix the mask. Just need to fix the sky. Okay, and see if my sky is actually, so it's selecting a lot of stuff here. Okay, so I can fix this linear gradient, and I can fix this luminance range so it's only selecting part of the sky. Okay, because it's picking up too much of the buildings right now. That's better. Okay. So a little refinement after you do your mask and copy and paste is all is needed sometimes. Okay. Again, sky is too orange, so I'm going to fix that. Now this is the one that I thought might be cool to pull over to Luminar because of these lines here, right? So linear gradient. Let's just do like that. And let's see how our mask is. Okay, so the mask is actually, that's pretty good here. Okay, so we're pretty good here. Go a little more blue. So now we're looking like blue hour, right? Okay, so see how that's shifting, right? Makes it more blue hour. The image is crooked, and I'm definitely going to check my highlights and things here. Okay. So crooked, we can fix either with the crop tool and auto. Okay, so it did a little bit, but it's also crooked in terms of transform. The buildings are converging, right? So I could try vertical and see what that does. So see how it straightened out the buildings, and that did a really good job. So tilting, not so tilting. Okay, so that's better. And I think it's a good crop anyways, right? Like so. I was going to come in on the bottom anyways. Okay? If you're not happy with what happens with auto, right, you can just do the vertical yourself and adjust. Just make sure you check this off and it will crop for you. Because maybe I just want to do it a little bit, and I still feel like it's crooked that way. Okay? I'm looking at the edge. Okay? And then I'm going to crop it. Oops. Sorry, I'm using the wrong keyboard shortcut. I'm using Luminar keyboard shortcut, which is C for crop, and Lightroom is R. So that messed me up. A little bit of crop. I'm looking for these things on the edge here so that I don't have a bright spot on the edge of my picture. Okay. Likewise, these red umbrellas and things here. Okay. And when I'm in the crop tool, I can actually use it to visualize sort of straightening the things. And when you're looking at stuff, always look in the middle, right? Now I think I've corrected too much vertical. There we go. All right, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to take this over to Luminar and see what it does with these wires, because it's kind of an interesting one, don't you think? Luminar Neo, there we go. And I'm just going to do a JPEG in the essence of speed here. It'll be interesting to see if it removes the wires going across here, and then we're just left with the lights, which actually might look pretty good. Okay. Bye, Ann. I'll see you later. I know you're Miss Dan today. He had to go to a grad for his son that he forgot about. So Dan's apologies. He will be back in 2 weeks. But we'll be doing Luminar next week. So if Anne is coming next week. All right, my Luminar is open on my other computer screen. Okay, so let's go here. And the automatic tool is under the erase tool. And let's just go remove power lines. Let's see what happens. Cross our fingers. I think they're actually tram lines, but we'll see what happens. I need some Jeopardy music to be playing while we're waiting for this. Any questions about anything while I'm waiting? Ron has purple haze. It's still thinking about it. So see, it's taken a while because it's analyzing this whole image, and because there's so many wires, including these ones going across here, I'm really interested to see what it does with it, right? Ha! Interesting. Hey, look at that. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so it removed all of the wires across the building and did a really great job. It removed all of the stuff up here, and it removed this over here. So it's actually done a really great job. Right now, I could actually mask this. Okay. Object removal. Sorry, I can't mask it. This is the one tool you can't mask, but I could do restore, right? So if, for example, I want to put these lights back here, okay, so I'm just going to hold down the / key while I paint, and it'll show me where I need to paint because I just want to put these lights back. Okay. Did it work? And then I click restore. Look at that. So I put them back. Now we've got this weird... Okay, we need the flag back, right? Because it's missing a flagpole, right? So it's interesting because I could literally just kind of tweak this a tiny little bit, and we've got something really good, right? Like this, these little edges, right, come in a little closer, right? It's done an outstanding job on a very, very complex subject. So if you are using Luminar Neo as a plugin, this is one of the benefits, okay? You could do this in Photoshop, but you have to do a lot of painting, okay? A lot of painting. And all I'm doing here is just cleaning up the little bits that it missed. And honestly, I'm actually really, really impressed. I almost want to send this one to Skylum and show them, hey, look what it did, right? Because to determine the difference between those things, wow, right? It looks like there's some lights missing over here. Oh, it just took the wires. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, it's not perfect right in here, but if I just do an erase, try and solve that, look at that. I'm just doing a fix of it. You would not know. If I did not tell you that was there, you would not know. At least I wouldn't. It's got me fooled. Okay, so I'm going to apply that. And while I'm in here, let's just see what else we got. Okay, Accent AI. Okay, that's pulling up sort of the contrast or shadows. Okay, darkening the sky a little bit more. We could change the sky, actually. So if we want a different sky, I'm going to just go with one that is one of these. There's California Clear Skies. It's actually a free set that you can get on Luminar's, on Skylum's website. And some of them are great because they're just a gradient, right? So this one's kind of cool because it's purple. Let's just see if any of these fit. Okay, that one's not bad. And I'm just going to make sure that the positioning of the sky is good. And do that a little bit. There we go. So that was not bad. Let's see if we need, maybe we need a nighttime sky. I do have some nighttime skies in our sky replacement pack. If you want to share with that, then share that with them. Please, Rob. That one's kind of neat. So you can literally, you know, make something funky. We can have some fireworks. That's kind of fun. You can make something funky. I don't know if sunset is going to work on this one. I'm looking for something that just has a really dark sky. And let's just see. We got some galaxies. These are the ones that come with Lightroom. We've got some Starry Night or Luminar, sorry. These ones come with the program. And so you generally aren't going to see these kind of skies in the city. Yeah, there's a stormy skies. Yeah. Lightning. We did this one over another one, and it was kind of cool. Kind of dramatic. My cat is mumbling in her sleep here. Okay, I'm looking for something that's just... Probably the one that I had was the best. One of these ones that fades out. I mean, something like... That's actually pretty good. Is it any different, though, than really what we had? Not really. So I'm not going to worry about it. I noticed there's a part of that missing there, so I'm going to go back to my erase tool because I'm missing part of this light right here. See that? So I'm just going to put that back. There we go. Missing a couple more. Let's make sure I fill in these little spots here. Easy to fix. Okay, so I'm going to apply this and come back to Lightroom, and I think we're done for today. Let's just see what we got. Marguerite, can I send, when I send an image from Lightroom to Photoshop, I check preferences that I want to edit the image as a PSD. It always arrives in Photoshop as a TIFF. Does anyone else have this problem? Aha. Okay, so there's two places you want to check that, Marguerite. When you are doing, go to Lightroom, go to Photoshop from Lightroom, check your preferences, okay, under external editing, and see what you have set up here, okay, so where it says edit in Photoshop, okay, so I have mine set up as PSD here, not TIFF. I have Pro Photo, which is the largest, so these are in order of largest to smallest, color space. If you just copy my settings, you'll be fine, okay. And again, I talk about this in the course as well. I've covered some of these things. Then when you go to take it to Photoshop, so say, for example, I want to edit this one in Photoshop, right? It's going to ask me if I want to do a copy. Yes, right? It should take it in as a Photoshop document, right? See, this one opened as a JPEG. Sorry, that's a bad example because it already is a JPEG. Let's pick up one of the raw files. All right, so see how they're out of order, right? See how that one did not go in the right place? So then if I just go file name, now it's next to the original, okay? So there's my original. And then there's what Luminar did. Pretty impressive, right? Pretty impressive. Okay, so let's do one that we want to open in Photoshop. So we go edit in. Okay, so I would open it as a smart object if I'm just opening directly into Photoshop. That's how I would do it. Okay. And just by that nature, it should open as a PSD. When you get that pop-up box, okay, you can override it there, but in your preferences, it should check and make sure it says PSD there. Okay. So see how now it's opened the raw file, right? And I haven't done anything to it, but let me just do something to it. I don't even know what I would do. Let's just say, well, I don't want to crop it. Let's just do some kind of a, let's run my action. Let's run my action. I think it has to be not a smart object, but let's just see. Okay, this is the action that I did for making the twirl. So where's my twirl here? Darlene's actions, dodge and burn, twirl. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to do the twirl. Okay, so it's going to do a bunch of things. Now this one may take a minute because it's applying a bunch of filters and then it's duplicating the layer. Okay. we're going to end up with a twirl. So if you haven't seen this one, Marty, this was one that I did as part of the Photoshop class. So I'm not sure if you're part of that class. Which classes have you taken, Marty? I think you've done the Luminar one, correct? So let's see what happens here. You can see the swirl happened on the first layer, and now it's doing it on the second layer. So again, this is an action that runs a series of events in Photoshop to apply certain effects, and it's things that you can, save and duplicate just with a click of a button. Because I opened the raw file like a silly person, because I wanted to show Marguerite that it would open as a PSD. Okay, so I didn't open it as anything in particular, right? Now I can just change the blend modes in here. So let's try different blend modes. So this is the twirl effect. Probably not the best image to twirl, but there's some interesting things. And you can see that person with the green backpack ended up with a swirl in the middle, right? So again, all I have to do is save. So not a save as. And then when I close it, it's going to come back into Photoshop, and we should see it as a PSD with these layers, okay? And the only difference between a TIFF and a PSD, Marguerite, is you can actually go larger with a TIFF, and the file is not compressed. So I personally prefer PSDs, and unless you're getting into things like doing compositing, where you're combining, 10 and 20 images into one thing in Photoshop, you'll probably never run out of memory. There's our original, and there's a twirl, and it's the twirl, right? So, and you can see that it is indeed a PSD, okay? So because I had my preferences set that way, that's what it took as a PSD, came back as, right? All right, so where are we at? Okay, so I've reminded you all, Lightroom for Photographers is coming soon. And next week, we'll be doing Luminar. So please send me some images. I am out of images to edit. I have a few more for Luminar, but I'm out of images for Lightroom. I still only have one of your images from Lightroom, Marty, the one that had the, let me see if I can find it, the fence post. I never did get the other one. So if you want to send me that, I just have this one. Okay, so if you want to send me the other version, okay, and let me know if you want me to do that one in Lightroom or in Luminar. We can do that. But we can have some fun with the texture on that wood. But just a reminder, again, send me your photos, please. Okay. So thanks for attending, everybody. We went a little bit off schedule, off topic today, but I hope there was some valuable nuggets there for you. Well, let me ask you this. Did you learn something today? So in the last 90 minutes, have you picked up at least one thing? If so, tell me what you learned. So if you're watching this live still, I'll put that in the chat. And if you're watching the replay, add a comment below in the comment area below the video. So I'd love to know what kinds of things you're picking up so that I can give you more valuable tidbits and nuggets next time. Off schedule is a reality. Gardening. All right, let's see. Danelle, if you have the Photoshop class, yeah, that's one of the last ones. I did that in Photoshop 301. Okay, so if you've got the Photoshop class, which I believe you do, it's in Photoshop 301, and I gave you a copy of the action to download as part of the course, so you can actually replicate it yourself. But I showed you the steps on how to make it as well and save your own actions. Do I have a preference in terms of what I shoot? Generally, I shoot street photography. Flowers, when they're there, I mean, who doesn't like photographing pretty flowers, especially when the light is there? But honestly, the answer to that actually, Catherine, is interesting, and that's a good question. Maybe I can just do a discussion about this one day, because what kind of a photographer do you call yourself, right? I always tell people I'm a people photographer because my background is in portraits and weddings, and I love photographing people, even when I'm traveling and doing street photography. But the bottom line is, like you mentioned, flowers. When will I photograph flowers? Because I see flowers and, it's like, it's a flower, right? And how many, cathedrals in Europe can you see before you get bored of seeing cathedrals and things, right? Or mosques in Turkey, or Watts if you're in Thailand. I mean, you get bored with these things. But what inspires me to take photos is light. So I am a seeker of light. And if I see good light, I will shoot it. Doesn't matter what the subject is. So great question. Thanks, Catherine. Let's see. Gardening today. Awesome. Good job. Good job, Sheila. Let me know when you're ready to do your next tutoring session as well. Schedule that anytime. Have you done your homework? Okay. Mini tutorials in Lightroom. That's the idea. Catherine learned about the color button. Twirl is new. Yeah, I thought I would just do that in there since I was there. Take care, Ron. If you don't own the class, Rob, if you could please put a link to the Photoshop class for Danelle, right, into the chat. Love the addition to the sky after the sky was selected. Okay, so there's a lot more you can do than just darken and lighten. And that's the whole benefit of having those masks and getting them really refined and perfected. And I'd like to point out, that the Lightroom one for Select Sky is not perfect, because a lot of people get on Skylim's case about, well, the masking is not good. It's not this, it's not that. But you saw what happened when I did that in Lightroom. It was not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, right? So it's hard to make these things. It's hard. So unless you're a computer programmer that knows how to do these things, I'm not going to critique somebody that makes a program that does automatic stuff. Whenever somebody asks me what I photograph, whatever interests me in the moment. Yeah, exactly. It's like, what camera is the best camera? The one that's in your hand, right? The one you have with you. There's a link for Photoshop for photographers for you to know in the chat. You can check that out. So it was recorded as a live class, and there's it's now split up into smaller lessons that you watch online. And there's also a Facebook group that you can join and ask questions there as well. So that's the link for the Photoshop class. Okay. And the Lightroom one that's coming up will be similar. So if you sign up for the Lightroom one that's coming up, you'll be able to attend the live sessions. So the lessons themselves will be pre-recorded and you can watch those anytime. What is going to be live is the Q&A. Okay, so exactly this, but you'll be able to ask me questions about the actual lessons in the course. And I want to show you guys something because I've been making, let me just look at it first. See if there's anything on here that I don't want to show you. No, I can show you this. So I've done an outline for the Lightroom course. Oops, I got to get out of full screen mode apparently on this one. So this is my outline, and I just want you to have an idea. Let me make myself smaller. Oh, the other way. There we go. Okay, so I just wanted to give you an idea of what's going to be in it. Okay, so far I've only recorded the first two lessons, and those two combined are about 35 minutes. So each lesson is going to be somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes, right? There's going to be links for resources. You'll have raw files that will be included, just like the other courses. And each thing is going to be described and covered in great detail, in more detail than I think any other course gives. And that's a lot of the feedback that I received on the Photoshop course, is that I talked about stuff that nobody else teaches. Like, for example, I show you how to actually get the right version of Lightroom and install it using the Adobe Cloud app. Okay, and which one? Make sure you have it. Okay, so all of these things I'm going to be covering. Okay, so if you can kind of just scan that, of course, importing, collections, and then that's not even at the develop module yet. Okay, so that's just the library module. Then once we get into develop, that's most of what we were doing today. Okay, snapshots, collections, batch processing, we did a little bit of today, using Photoshop as a plugin, using other plugins, as well as using things like the book module, slideshow, and print, which I use quite often. Okay, so the Lightroom course is going to be quite extensive. So I'd love for you to join me in that next adventure. The Lightroom course will start being available online as soon as we get the lessons uploaded. So 1 and 2 have been recorded. They just need to be uploaded, and Rob needs to add the front end and the back, the bumpers, which is the beginning and the ending sort of little intros. So the classes will be, you log in and you watch them on the website, Danelle. And the live classes, we're probably at this point going to start scheduling them end of June, because I need to get probably at least 20 classes recorded before we start doing the live sessions. And the live sessions will be twice a week, probably for 4 weeks like we did last time. Again, estimating, because I don't know how long they're going to be yet. Okay. And again, if you miss any of the live classes, they'll always be recorded, and the Q&A that goes into them will become part of the course. You can submit your questions ahead of time as well. So even if you're not there, I will be answering your questions. Yeah, wait until it's hot. Yeah, we're going to start when it's 30 degrees, so that I'm cooking in my office. So I might have to do this on the patio. We'll be coming to you live from the patio, right? All right, we have to have supper. It's late here, and I know it's late in the East, so thanks everybody for sticking around with some of the rambling there at the end. And join us next week at 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be covering Luminar Neo next week. And I have some new things to show you. All right, take care. Until then.